Hey, my name is Mike Campion, and today we're going to talk about how you can grow your cleaning company faster than you ever have before while working less than 15 hours a week. And the key to doing this is being able to know how to hire the right people in the right order, and we're going to dive into that with 3 steps. Step 1, we're going to discover how to be the owner and a coach, not the player. Number 2, we're going to talk about how and when to add to your team. And then the final thing, number 3, we're going to talk about exactly who does what. So quick little disclaimer, we're going to talk a lot about job descriptions throughout, like exactly, especially in the who does what piece. And I don't have time to go over every job description that we kind of have written and done for our clients. I just put them in a link below. So if you want access to the job descriptions like that we use for owners of cleaning companies and our clients, basically you can click below, and there's really only 5 or 6 people you're going to need to scale well beyond $1 million. Grabbing the link below, no charge or anything like that. All right, let's dive in. The first thing that we're going to want to do is understand the concept that you're the coach and your team are the players, right? So your job is not to do the thing, it's to create the systems and the processes and set them free. And the way we do that, there's 3 pieces to that. First is we've got to make sure that we get the vision and the values. And vision and values just means the rules to the game, right? Anytime if someone's trying to explain a board game that they played before and I haven't, if you're like me, the first thing you ask is, well, how do you win? What do you need to do to win? That's the vision and the goal. The second thing you're going to ask is, what are the rules? Like, what happens if I do this? Am I allowed to do that? That is, in the business parlance, that would be your core values. Those are rules we're going to play by to get to the goal or the vision, i.e. win the game. And keep in mind, core values are things that you share, not things that you coach, right? Core values are who they are. They've got to come kind of batteries included with those. I can teach just about anyone to clean, but if my core value is to always do everything with high integrity, and that's not their thing, I can train all I want, they're never going to get there. So when it comes to culture, our job is to find people that share our values and empower them to win under the rules that we've got. The final piece of the puzzle is systems, right? That's basically you as the coach or the owner figuring out the strategy that you need to win and coaching your team to run those plays. That's the implementation. So again, just to sum up part 1 here, your job is to assemble the team, give them the strategy, the culture, the vision. Their job is actually to run the plays, right? Their job is to agree on what it means to win. They're not aligned with your vision, that's not going to work. Their job is to follow the rules, the core values, which should be shared values. So it's not you trying to force your values on them. It's attracting people that already share your values and encouraging them to live by the values that you mutually share. And the cool thing is everybody wins when you reach the goals and the vision. So when it comes to the goals and the vision, if my goal was, hey, I want to buy a new boat, so we need to get an extra $1 million in revenue this year, I don't know that my employees are really going to be, my team's really going to be super interested in that because they don't win on that. It could be we're going to serve more people, we're going to grow in revenue, and that's going to make bonuses. We want to make sure the goals are things that everybody wins on, not just us. So take a minute now and think through, what role are you playing that really should and could be turned over to your team? So just take a second there and go, this is the part of the company where I'm the most coach or the most player and not enough coach. I want you to just identify, here's the role where I'm most being the player. God forbid it's cleaner, but if it's not, what's like taking the most time? As we go on, I want to encourage you guys. I used to think if I didn't do it, my team wouldn't respect me, right? I felt like I had to be the first one in, and if I was going to ask someone to clean, I had to be able to clean. But when I got to the bottom of it, or kind of with some perspective as I got older, I realized that was really selfish thinking. It was from my point of view, and I was worried about me and what my team would think about me, not about them and what they wanted. As I get a little older, a little more experienced, I realized they didn't care what I did or didn't do or could or couldn't do. What they did care about was, would their paychecks cash? Is this vision and this goal that I'm casting worthwhile? Am I the guy or gal that's going to be able to get them there? They wanted a leader that could get them where they wanted to go. They weren't really interested in what I was doing or when I showed up or any of that stuff. So the reality was, my doing the job, which I thought would be inspiring to them, wasn't inspiring. It was really just lack of leadership disguised in mental laziness, if I have to be honest. It's basically like the CEO of an CEO of an airline flying the plane, like showing the pilots, I can do that. And then while the plane's flying, running to the back and helping the flight attendants, hand out food. Neither the passenger nor the flight attendants nor the pilots are going to feel better. They're going to feel worse. They're going to go, who's running the company? So the big kind of wrap it up takeaway for this first point here is, you work on your systems and your team, and your systems and your team run the company, right? We've got to make that switch from, my job is to do everything, be the smartest guy or gal in the room, and kind of have all the answers. The reality reality is your job is to create a vision, the goal that you want to get to, which is dictating how you win, being really clear on what the rules are, the core values, and creating systems and attracting people that want to be a part of that team. And the systems in the team run the company, you run the systems in the team. Now that we're clear on your role as the coach, let's talk about when and how do you actually hire the players. Let's jump into number 2, which is when and how to add to your team. Now, it's not about hiring people, which is what we think. We've got other videos on here's how to run a hiring ad and here's how to run a hiring funnel. Today, we're really going to talk about the why behind the what. So the first thing is we don't want to just, I'm busy, which is what most people do. I need to hire people. We want to get crystal clear on what's the next thing I need to get off of my plate. So that's the kind of foundation I want to lay here. Let's jump into how we do that. Number 1, when do you hire? The answer is actually pretty simple. Anytime you're doing something that you don't like, or you're doing some of the implementation working in the job, in the business, not on it, especially if you feel like doing that work is taking you from things that you do like doing, like creating the vision, the culture, the systems, and you can pay the person or the software, the system, we're going to talk about in a little bit, while keeping expenses under 25%. So just a really easy answer to when do I hire? If you're working in the business and or doing something that's not an owner role, especially one that you don't like or that's keeping you from the owner role, and you can afford to pay that person and your expenses still be, and basically there's cost of goods sold and expenses. Cost of goods sold are what it costs to provide the service. We coach that to be 45%. Expenses, which would be overhead, software, administrative team like we're talking here, should be 25%. That leaves you with a 30% profit. So when to hire, as soon as you recognize you're working in the business, not on it, and it's taking you away from your on the business job, and you can find a way to hire that person and keep, even with their new salary added to your expenses, keep the expenses under 25%. So number 1 is pretty simple, the when to hire. Number 2 is in what order. And again, in the job descriptions below that you can click to, we kind of do it in the typical order that people get out of things owning cleaning businesses. That's the standard. I'm going to kind of go over how you're going to decide what works for you in your situation. First and foremost, for everybody, everything after this is going to kind of be dependent on your situation. But for everybody, the very first thing that you need to do is get out of cleaning for real. Not I'm out of the cleaning most of the time or some of the time or as long as no one calls in, but someone always calls in, like really for real out of the cleaning is first. The way you do that is you need a team of fully trained adult cleaners. In your mind, picture a fully trained adult grown-ass, pardon my language, cleaner. They don't need a lead. I need someone else to check my work and tell me if I did okay. I'm a grown adult cleaner, fully trained. I am a lead. I can handle it myself. I own a decent car. It's not all banged up. It's insured. I'm willing to drive. I understand the rags get dirty and I can clean them. I'm also excited to run group interviews, one-on-one interviews, working interviews. I want to contribute to the team at a higher level, not just do the cleanings. And I'm excited to come to the weekly meetings, right? I'm not going to complain or moan. Maybe I might even get an opportunity to run them sometimes. I'm always at the monthly parties. I love getting feedback at the quarterly reviews. These are the types of people that we want with cleaners. And the reason I'm going so far into this is most of the time we don't have an automated hiring funnel. And there's another video I can probably link to that goes over the hiring funnel. So we never have enough good quality cleaners, so our standard's really low. And if they just show up and don't stink, we think they're great. Once you've got a hiring funnel that works, again, we cover that in a different video, you can have more quality cleaners than you need, and you can start raising the standard to some of the things we've talked about, right? They want to help with a hiring process. They expect to come to weekly meetings. Of course, they know how to drive. They're legal to work. They speak English. Whatever your standards are of what you really want, just put them all under fully trained, fully grown adult cleaner. So once you've got enough of those guys and gals where you're completely out of cleaning, they're all working, 15, 20 hours a week. They're all working 30 or 40 and one quits. You got an emergency. If they're all working 15 or 20 and one quits or in the show, it's okay. You can hire floaters, all that good stuff. But once you've got a good team of full-grown adult-like cleaners, the next thing you're typically gonna want to offboard is whatever takes the most of your time and or sucks the most life out of you. So basically, you just can do a time study on your own self and write down what you do and the thing that takes the most time. And I'm gonna weight it twice, right? If this doesn't take a lot of time, but I really hate it, I might move it a little further. Or if I don't mind doing this, but it just takes a tremendous amount of time, that's gonna go forward. So again, in the job descriptions below, we kind of give you the idea of what that typical schedule is. But if it varies for you, you're going to want to offload, not what we tell you to offload next, but the thing that drives you the most nuts or takes the most time. For the majority of cleaners or cleaning company owners who are out of cleaning, they've got a team of fully grown cleaners. The next thing is typically a scheduler. This can be a sneaky one because it's not that it takes a tremendous amount of time. It can just take a tremendous amount of headache, right? I call the scheduling job vacation killers. So almost always for residential, people really struggle with this. And on the commercial side, it's still a little tricky, but it's not as custom. So next is typically the scheduler. And again, if you're like, oh, that only takes a couple hours a week. It may, but the problem is it's 24/7, right? Like if you go on a vacation and you've got people that, when you work, it's headache work, right? Because typically you're going to have a locked schedule that you just, you only have to update if somebody quits or you hire somebody, or a customer quits or you get a new customer. So it's typically just a standard schedule that you're only tweaking. So when you're working on it, usually it's an emergency because someone called out or whatever. So the next thing you're going to want to get offload is a scheduler. And I know a lot of you are thinking, I am the only one in the world that knows where all my people, where they live and who has what. And I got a kind of public service announcement. Most of the time we think the scheduling job is hard. It's not that hard. Our standards are low. We've allowed our employees to start dictating to us, well, I only work with Susan. I only work every third Tuesday unless there's a full moon. And then the same thing with the clients. We get into this whole, we give the same cleaner every time. And we think that's a good, unique selling proposition, but it's not, because you're lying, right? I can't guarantee any human will do anything. People quit or get sick or move or take vacations or just call in or whatever the heck may be. So you're really setting yourself up for failure if you tell clients you'll always have the same person, because you're guaranteeing some other human is going to do something in the future, which is a crazy guarantee, right? Typically, if the scheduler is super hard to hire, it's low standards for the cleaners and the clients. That makes the scheduling job hard. So there's kind of two ways to go there. We want to raise our standard for our clients and our cleaners, makes the scheduling job easier. The next thing that we want to offload or get off your plate would be answering the phone. And again, typically this isn't a huge amount of time, but answering the phone, you could also incorporate emails and things like that. But we'll start with the phone because it's the most disruptive. Worst case scenario on this is you've got a cell phone that just goes right to you. And no matter what you're doing, you're in deep, ideally owner work, you're coaching, you're running a weekly meeting, you're creating a system, you're reviewing the marketing, you're looking over your financials, you're doing owner type stuff, and the phone rings, right? And the problem is, I know you're going, well, some of these calls, especially on the residential side, they're really time sensitive, right? We just hire an answering service. And for commercial, almost nothing's time sensitive, right? If it's the middle of the night and the alarm's going off, what are you gonna do? Like run down there? Something's on fire, call the fire department. So there's only so much you can do. And on residential, typically the only thing that's really time sensitive is a lead. Most of the things you think are time sensitive. In commercial, almost nothing's time sensitive. On a residential, a new client that wants to get a quote right now is kind of the only time sensitive one. Answering service can handle all of that. A lot of people want to hire a receptionist or have someone do this in-house, but the problem is they do pesky things like sleep or take vacations or quit, and then you're stuck. An answering service for a couple $100 a month will work 24/7, and when someone quits, they just put up the next guy and the next guy and the next guy. So answering service is great. The next thing we're going to hire is accountant, typically. And again, now's where we start getting into what's taking the most amount of time. And the problem with accountants are twofold, really. One, if you're doing the work yourself, this is one, as long as it's taking you less than like 5 or 10 hours a month, not a week, it's fine for you to do personally, because you get the added benefit of being closer in touch with your numbers and being forced to look at them. So there is a little bit of benefit for you being the accountant yourself, but the reason people typically don't hire is the accounting's just not getting done. So if the accounting's not getting done and you don't have access to key data and know how to read it, like cost of goods sold, revenue, profit, overhead, every month on a timely basis, a lot of these accountants don't get your data till third or fourth week of the next month, in which case the first week of the last month data is like 2 months old. So if the accounting's not getting done at all, I'm probably going to put this a little higher. If you're doing the accounting well and it's only taking you 5-6 hours a month, you can kind of move this down unless you hate it, and then you can move it up in terms of importance. But the big thing is this gets done right. And if you're able to do it and want to do it, fine. If you're not able to do it, a lot of times we get afraid to hire an accountant, or the accountant bullies you or does what they want to do. Different topic for a different day. But typically it's going to be cleaner, scheduler, answering service, accountant. And then the last hire for commercial would be customer happiness manager. Residential, you can hire a salesperson after this. So customer happiness manager really is going to proactively go after churn. So they're just going to typically call clients. If you've got a new employee, they might call that client. If there's a complaint, they're going to call that client for the next couple calls. If there's a new client, you're going to call them for their first couple cleans. Just touching base with clients periodically. They're going to do that. The goal of the customer happiness manager is to reduce churn, to get 5-star reviews, to sometimes get referrals, or all excellent. Hear about things before they happen, right? The worst thing is when a customer calls to quit and you try and save it on that call. It's a bear, right? But if the customer happiness manager can call and get that heads up ahead of time and deal with it proactively, this job can actually make you money even after you pay them, because if you get a referral, if your churn goes down, these are all things that are directly tied to money. So for commercial, that's really all I'd recommend you hiring. And I promise you, if you're like, oh my gosh, I have an admin or a general manager, if the cleaners are doing their job and you've got an answering service accountant, customer happiness manager, scheduler, and everyone's doing their full job, there's almost nothing left to do. Most of the stuff that that you think is VA work or manager work is some version of, well, they have to check on accounts. That would be the cleaners checking on their own accounts and the customer happiness manager check on those. Someone's got to answer the phone. That would be the answering service. So almost every job, we've had people run multi-million-dollar companies just with this breakdown. The only kind of last hire that you might need would be a salesperson. We really only recommend this for residential or commercial over a couple $1 million, and I'll tell you why. So on the residential side, we almost always recommend this last for a couple reasons. One, even though selling's kind of working in the business, it's the most profitable in the business thing that you can do, right? Salesperson can make, gosh, if you sell half the people that you go talk to end up working with you, and on residential, say the average client's $400 a month, they stay a couple years, that's about 10 grand, right? So if you go on 2 sales calls, they each take an hour, and you get 1 new client. Well, geez, oh Pete's, in 2 hours, you get a $10,000 sale. That's like $5,000 an hour of gross revenue coming in. Obviously, the profit's a little lower, and some people stay longer and some people stay shorter, but still, that's pretty good darn wages. So it's the best paid thing that you're gonna do working in the business, right? We still want you working on the business generally, but that's why we want to get rid of this last. Also, it's got the most risk. It's frustrating when people pay salespeople commission, which is fine, and they say, oh, this guy's free. He's not free or she's not free. It's the most expensive person you have, right? If you get 16 leads and you would have gone out and turned 8 of those leads into customers for $400 a month, that's $35,000, $40,000 a year in recurring revenue. If this guy does half of that, that was wildly expensive in just 1 month. So even if you just pay this person commission and they don't make any money, that wasn't cheap. That was the most expensive person you have. So we like the owner doing it if they're better, and it also pays really well. And this is the hardest to hire, frankly, because there's a little higher churn, not as high a churn as cleaners, but then in any of the other admin stuff, it's a little more skilled, blah, blah, blah. On the commercial side, the reason we encourage you not to take a salesperson is several reasons. One, a good salesperson is either going to want a large base or to have lots of leads coming in, right? For a commercial cleaning company, even a multi-million-dollar one doing well, bad month, you might have 0 new bids to give. In a good month, you might have 4 or 5, right? So that's just not a full-time gig. When we talked about the return on time investment for the residential, let's look at commercial. Say your average client's $2,500 a month, they stay a little longer. Sometimes you'll have a commercial client that could save decades if you're in business that long, but let's just say they only stay 3 years, which for commercial is very conservative. $2,500 a month, that's 30 grand a year times 3 years. That's almost $100,000. We're talking $90,000. So if that sale takes an hour or 2 for you to do, goodness gracious, that's really hard to sub out. So A, you typically don't have enough volume for a good salesperson to be interested, and B, it's such a big lever to your revenue, it's really hard to have you not do that. The one caveat I'll give you before we move on to number 3 is you don't have to do this in person, right? So on the commercial side, you can break up, you can do it on the residential as well, but it works fine on the commercial. You can break up the job walk, I gotta measure, and how many toilets, and how much square footage, what type of floors, all that kind of technical stuff. You can have a cleaner do, right? That's $20 an hour work. You can have a cleaner kind of go out there, measure it for you. You might have to train them a little bit, tell you how long they think it'll take to clean. All that stuff you can have a cleaner do. The only thing you personally have to do, or I am encouraging you to do, would be the sales conversation, which can be done over Zoom. So obviously, if you're in town, for crying out loud, go out there and see the man or woman, whoever the decision maker is. But if you're traveling, I don't mind doing a sales call for a $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a month job if I'm traveling, because it's typically going to be like a 30, 40 minute call. I just don't want to not be able to travel. So as long as I can do it traveling, really, I wouldn't recommend you hiring a salesperson as a commercial cleaning company unless you're millions and millions of dollars. And even then, I'm only going to give them the under the $2,000 a month jobs. I still, if there's a 6-figure lifetime value job and it's going to take me an hour or 2 with the guy to get it, I'm going to spend that hour or 2. It's really hard to justify not taking that. All right. Hopefully that gives you a good idea of what order to hire people. Let's jump into number 3, which is how do you train them, right? And the cool thing is it's pretty simple. They watch you do the thing. As they're watching you, pay attention to the questions that they ask, not only to benefit the system that you're using, right? If it's a good question, you can go, hey, I should have trained better. You can kind of update how you train or how the next person trains. Also, you understand their ability, right? If they're asking kind of 3 buckets they would fall into. One is they're asking really good questions, which is a really good green flag, right? Smart questions go a long way for me. That's they're 80% in if they're just asking good questions, because A, it shows they care, B, it shows that they understand what you're saying and they're trying to get better already. So love good questions. B is ask no questions at all, which is a yellow flag, right? Not a disqualifier. They could just not feel comfortable with you. They could be scared. So something we're going to take a note of and work on. And the other thing is they're asking really dumb questions, right? And they're just going to drive you and the team nuts with I'm just not getting this. That's probably the worst one. Not a disqualifier, but a hard yellow, right? Okay. So the first thing is they watch you do the thing, pay special attention to the questions that they ask. The second thing is you watch them do the thing. Now, the goal here is not for them to be perfect right off the bat, because that's almost never going to happen. The goal is it's okay to make mistakes. You want to let them know that so they don't feel a ton of pressure, but it's not okay to either keep making the same mistake over and over again or not know why they made the mistake, right? And that kind of comes back to the questions. So I tell most of my team, as long as they're a core values match, as long as they're making new, better mistakes every time, I've got almost an infinite amount of time to coach them. I have no time when I'm coaching, they make a mistake, I coach them what to do, and they go make the same mistake again. I do that about twice, and then I'm just like, hey, I just don't have time for that. So watch them do it. What you're looking for is not perfection, but that they don't keep making the same mistake over and over, and they know why. They ask questions and figure out why they made the mistake. All right, the next step would be you're gonna check the outcome and give feedback. How they receive the feedback is huge. If we've been in cleaning, any of us, for long enough, you know that when you maybe get some feedback from a client that's not overwhelmingly positive, they've got some concerns. And for some of us and some of our cleaners, you might be like, oh, I've got this pit in my stomach. I don't want to talk to him. He's going to be angry. He's going to blah, 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 blah. This is where you kind of get that right off the bat, right? So when I give feedback, generally I want to be as positive as I can, but I want to make sure there's some negative feedback in there, some feedback that may not feel so good. And again, I'm just looking at how they receive it, right? Because this is when they're trying to get the job, or they've just started the job. So they're still trying to feel their way on the team. And if they're already defensive, wait a month or two, it's going to be terrible. They watch you, you watch them, you check their work and give feedback, you pay attention to how they give feedback, then you have them check other people's work, right? And here we're going to notice how they give feedback. We don't get this a lot, but we don't want people that don't even understand that there was a mistake made, right? That shows they don't get it. So if there's no feedback, that's not great unless the job is perfect, in which case the feedback would be the job is perfect and here's specifically why. So even then there would be feedback. The bigger thing we get is super critical, right? Like, oh, I've got the tiniest bit of power and boy, oh boy, am I going to jam it down your throat. And I've got 1,000 ways this guy can, or gal that we're reviewing, could do better. And again, typically they're the most sensitive. The people that have the most to say about others' work are the least available to hear that. So we're just looking for them giving feedback in a really constructive, here's how we can all get better way, not in an I caught you, I got you, I want to be the boss of you kind of situation. The next step is they're going to train the next person. This is really important. The big mistake owners make here is they've got this weird thing where they're like, oh, that guy's brand new, or Steve's been with me for 6 months, so I let him train. And it's really just this bias of they've been around longer, so I feel more comfortable with them. That doesn't always correlate, right? Sometimes people right away can train. Most of the time, if you've done a good job training, they can train the next guy. And the best way for anyone to learn anything is to teach it. I've gotten so much better at business as I've started coaching others and being held accountable to my own stuff. So there's really two big benefits. One, it collapses the time frame to getting people full grown adults that you can send out and train and do everything. The only way we think we just have to wait and then we give them a chance and then they either pass or fail and we think the waiting had something to do with it. If they've been trained properly, they're ready now, right? So you're going to collapse the time frames and you're like, well, they might make a mistake. They might make it in 6 months. And if they're going to make a mistake, I'd rather do it now, because usually what happens is we wait and then they're training someone in an emergency because you have to, and then the stakes are pretty high. I want to have them train now where I know they're brand new and I can keep an eye on it, right? So it's going to collapse time frames. It's actually going to give you the opportunity to watch that person train the next person and keep an eye on it. So if something does go wrong, you're ready. And it's the best way for them to learn and get good is to train the next guy. Final piece is check the outcome and give feedback, right? Is the new person doing good? What did the trainer say about the new person? Did you feel that was an accurate picture of the new person? What did the new person say about the trainer? Did you feel that the comments they had were accurate as well? So that's how you train just about anyone to do just about anything, or certainly everybody in the cleaning world. Give you a quick little bonus for the admin stuff. Doesn't work on the cleaner side. I mean, I guess it can, but you can record them watching you and you watching them. And when you do it on Zoom, like any training, like for schedulers, by the way, does not have to be in person. They can be over online. Even if they are local, you could still even be just in 2 different offices and zoom in on each other. That way you can record it, and that becomes your training for future team members. A couple notes just for high performance, just to do all this better. One, we kind of went over the blocking and the tackling. If you've got your vision right, the goals correct, you've got your core values matched, that's going to cover most of it. If you do the training the way we talked, that's going to cover the rest. Here's just some mortar to fill in the bricks. Your job is to hold high standards. This is one of the things that, as we're recording this, Netflix just came out with a thing on the Dallas Cowboys in the 90s. And Jimmy Johnson came into that team that was terrible and took a couple years to turn it into a Super Bowl team. And the biggest thing I was impressed by in the interviews with the players, who not all of them liked him, just said his standards were so high. He wouldn't tolerate anything that wasn't low. It's easy to tell people to have high standards. It's hard to get them to have high standards, and telling them is worthless. You just have to do it. So this must be caught, not taught, right? You just have to have those high standards. The good news is when you have those high standards, the people around you have high standards and it propagates. The bad news is when you have low standards, the people people around you have lower standards and that propagates. And again, you can tell people all you want. It's not going to do anything. It's really about just the standards that you actually hold. The second thing ties right into the standards is how you show up beats what you say every day in every way, right? So any of us that have kids know we can tell our kids, my sweet bride, I still remember our son, our little guy, was in the car and something happened where another driver from his backseat annoyed him and he goes, came out with the F word. And my wife doesn't curse a ton, but every now and again. And I looked at her and she looked down and our son just thought that's how you do it, right? And of course we don't tell our son he should use the F word when he's 3 in the back seat. But what you say is going to beat, or what you do is going to beat what you say every time, both positive and negative. Good news is, just so my wife isn't totally thrown under the bus, she's amazing and he models so much of the good stuff that she done. That's really impressive. So, all right, for you, I've been talking a lot. Let's just take a beat. Why don't you write down what's taking the most time and make a decision to hire that person out? And again, if you want the typical order, because those job descriptions are going to be really handy, and we're going to talk about that next, just grab the link below so you can have it. I wanted to give one, we'd mentioned earlier on that scheduler. I wanted to hit that real quick because that's the one, especially on the residential, where people just think they're this magical unicorn. I still remember years ago, one of my Millionaire Mastermind clients, Daisy, really sweet girl, she was explaining and this was a mastermind meet. We were at this big mansion and I think there's only a dozen of us. So it was a small group. We all knew each other really well. And we knew each other, she and I knew each other well enough. She could fight with me, right? When I told her, you got to hire a scheduler, because she had a great company, lots of things. And she was just adamant that, Mike, you don't understand my area and my thing. It's not possible. And I just looked around the room, because like I said, there's a dozen of my clients, give or take. How many of you guys have a scheduler right now? And there were several who already had a scheduler that were doing it. And that really helped shatter that belief. So just pretend our little YouTube community, there's lots of other cleaners here. I promise you, certainly if there's some of our clients in the audience, they've already hired this. We've done this hundreds and hundreds of time. Beautiful thing is, within a year, something happened with her husband and they separated, and she needed like a year to just focus on her own situation. And she did have a scheduler at that time because she was coachable and she was her business ran and paid for everything for a year while she kind of had to take some time for herself. So the big picture that I want to give you guys that just typically clicks it in for our clients is, think of the process, we call it thin slicing. So instead of hiring one person to be a VA or a manager, we just, every time there's this random job that we don't want to do, but we don't really understand, we just have a gut feeling that, and we don't want to do the hard work of thinking to create a system, we just hire a person and hire a person. Those are really hard to maintain and we're setting them up for failure. And if they do leave, now they're doing 6 different jobs. They're very hard to replace. My beautiful wife, when I first started a couple companies since we've been together, she ended up just doing little like fill-in stuff. And we'd always try to replace her. And it was a bear because she was only working like 20 hours a week. I'm like, why can't we hire this? But she was doing 7 different jobs, right? So she might be doing 3 hours a week on accounting and 2 hours a week on this. No one, but very rare, if any, humans in the world could do all of them. And she wasn't even great at them. So she didn't love it. It wasn't that was her best. She was just the owner. So she's like, she had a vested interest. So we learned from that when we had to hire, because again, if she was working 70 hours a week, it's like, oh, we might have to hire 2 or 3 people to replace her. But when she's working 20, I'm like, how can we not hire one person to replace this part-time employee? And it's because she was working 20 hours a week as needed, doing whatever, filling everything in. There just weren't the systems and processes. So that's where I kind of discovered the thin slicing, where you want to hire people for a very specific job. So one of the things she was doing is accounting for one of the, it's easy to hire an accountant, but an accountant can also sell or have a difficult conversation with an employee or figure out some software problem or deal with the bank, or like that accountant's not going to do all that stuff. So just hire people for a very specific job. Think of it as thin slicing, as opposed to having one person do everything and becoming a bottleneck. Again, when it was my wife, i.e. an owner, it wasn't great. When it's a manager and they're not even an owner, it's a big risk in your business that you don't want and probably can't afford. So the way to think about this is, when you do the work, you're the bottleneck. When an owner is doing the work, the owner is the bottleneck. When you hire one person to do a bunch of jobs, you don't just solve that problem, you move the bottleneck. So we don't get rid of the bottleneck, we just move it from you to another human, which it's better that it's not you, but you're still trapped because you can't vacation. What if that human quits or doesn't do a good job or decides to hold you hostage? Now that we're clear on your job as a coach, how and when to add to your team, you're gonna want the details around exactly who does what, and that's what we're gonna jump into right now. Number 3, who does what exactly? The first piece here is all team members for any job in any business you're going to have going forward need 3 things. They can do the job. Nice thing about cleaners is, as long as they're physically not handicapped or mentally not handicapped, just about anyone can do it. You get to neurosurgery, the percentage of humans that can do that's a lot smaller. So the nice thing is can do is pretty easy to find with cleaners. So the next thing is will do, and that's where it reverses. A lot of people will be like, I'd love to be a neurosurgeon. They make a ton of money and I've not had that life, but it seems like a pretty good life, but they can't do it. Cleaners, lots of people can do it, not so many will want to do it. And that's where the third piece comes in, which is core values match. And that's where on the cleaner side, and by the way, this goes for all the scheduler, customer happiness manager, accountant, all the jobs we've talked about. They have to be able to do it, can do the job, they have to be willing to do the job, and they have to be a core values match. The core values match is so nice with cleaners, that's what covers the will do, right? I promise you, unless you're paying way too much, any cleaner in your business right now can go get an easier job physically, probably for more money tomorrow. So like, how do I compete with that? You got to give them something they can't get anywhere else, right? And that's typically culture, who they work with, the experience. Like, I enjoy these people. I love this vision, this goal. I'm down with the cause. I'm not just here for a paycheck. And that's where the core values come in. So the first thing is can do, will do, core values match. Number two is start with the end in mind, right? That's where the job descriptions come in. Because again, so many times as when I was younger, you're good at marketing, your company starts growing, you start getting busy, and you're like, I'll just hire a guy to do that. But we don't really define what that is or what the skill set is or how long it should take or how it should pay or any of that. And then we just start hiring that guy and that guy and that guy. And what happens is we make the same amount of money or less as we did before because we're paying all these salaries and we're still doing just as much work or more because we didn't really think through what to do. That's why we're going to talk through how to build a job description. And like I mentioned, you can grab all of our job descriptions for all cleaning company owners in the description. That said, I'm going to walk through what you'll see in our job descriptions. And if you're going to create another job description for any other business, these are the same format I'd go. Number one, you want a clear title. My least favorite title is general manager or VA. What does that mean? What do they do? Like, they manage things generally, they assist you from afar. That means nothing, right? So VA bad, customer happiness manager, good. Scheduler, good. Answering service, good. Like, it's very clear. There's no mystery around what does a customer happiness manager do? Make sure the customers are happy, right? So one is a clear title. Keep in mind, we're going to thin slice, right? The customer happiness manager isn't doing accounting checks. The accountant isn't checking on the quality of the work. The salesperson isn't making sure payroll processes. So thin slice, one job per. And you can cross train, right? Once the customer happiness manager is locked, can he or she learn the scheduling job and jump in for that guy or gal when they're on vacation? Of course. We just don't want them doing all that all the time. So thin slice these job descriptions. Second, you want to make sure you mold the applicant or the employee to your job description, not your job description to the applicant or employee, which is exactly what I did with my wife, right? She was a sweet person committed to the business that had general skills. So we had her doing a bunch of specific stuff that she was varying degrees of good or not good at, or that I was, most of which I wasn't good at, or I would have done it. And we had molded the job description to the person. And even though the person was an owner, it still bit us in the butt, right? So if it's not going to work for the owner to have the job description molded to them, it certainly isn't going to work for an employee that can quit tomorrow, because then you go to hire Natalie that's doing accounting and this and that, we can't get it. So when customer happiness people go like, oh, I could be your social or cleaner, I could be your social media person, I'm really great at that. First of all, I probably can't. Second of all, it's like, great, then be great at the social media or be great at cleaning, but we're not going to have you do both. So really important that, or cleaners, well, I can only work this, or I need 40 hours a week. We don't mold what we need to the cleaner. We go, cool, well, if you can't drive, we need people to drive. Sorry. Or if you need 40 hours a week, that's not how we do this. This is a part-time gig. So we don't mold what we have to offer in terms of the job to what this applicant needs. We mold the applicant to our job description, and if they won't mold, we just get another applicant. No big deal. So we're going to have a clear title. We're going to make sure that we're thin slicing. We are molding the applicant to the job description, not the job description to the applicant. Next, we're going to have rules to follow. And these are going to be the exact same for every position. These are your core values. For us, have fun, make money, be real, help out. So you literally just put, here are the rules to be a part of this team. You got to, again, have fun, make money, be real, help out, fill in with your own core values. Next, this is a big one. This is a huge shift that took me a long time to get. Go with outcomes, not to-dos. Right? This is the to-dos will get you, because what'll happen is you keep adding to-dos to their list, right? Like, you got to pick up the phone, and someone's got to, take the deposits to the bank, and and basically their job description is just this ever-expanding list of crap you don't want to do. But the problem is, as the business changes and your ability changes, we don't delegate, we abandon. We just throw everything at them and run like heck, and then they just typically get overwhelmed, or either overwhelmed and fail, or overwhelmed, start holding a hostage. It goes bad, right? So we want outcomes, not to-dos. So it's fine to have a checklist for cleaners, but what I really want is the outcome of you've done a good job when 90+% or 95% of your clients come home and go, oh, this place looks good. I feel amazing. So you can have a checklist to help them, but the checklist is not a to-do, the outcome's a to-do. If I've got a cleaner that consistently has nothing but positive reviews and is like, I don't want to use a checklist, boss, fine by me. Now I've got a cleaner that's getting some negative feedback from clients, they're gonna use the goddamn checklist. So we always want to start with outcomes, and the to-dos are really just guidelines to help them get the outcomes that you want. But if they're getting the outcomes and they're following the rules, right, the core values, aren't lying, cheating, or stealing, or violating core value, really for just about any position of my company, if they're getting the outcome I set for them and they're following the rules, I have no rules. They can do whatever they want. It really doesn't make a big difference. So outcome, the time it should take, and again, being outcome based. So time it should take is just a general thing. For cleaning, it might be very specific, but for customer happiness manager, about how many hours per week this should be. And by the way, customer happiness manager might be at least 1 referral, 3 5-star reviews a month, and churn should be below 3% a month, something like that. So those would be outcomes. And if they choose to call or send gifts or whatever they want to do, so be it. And then the very last thing is 3 to 5 guidelines or tasks, to-dos, only if needed. And again, those to-dos are really just to help them get the outcome. But if they're following the core values and getting the outcome, I don't care if they do any tasks. I just want to make sure they get the outcome. Literally, if we had a cleaner that didn't clean a thing, they just walked into a house and did a magic clap and it looked perfect, and the owner came home and was happy, fine by me. That system works for that person. All right, let's jump into number 3. This is really exciting. We're gonna go from the easiest to the hardest way to eliminate things. As owners, we tend to jump to hiring right away, and that's not the first, second, or third thing we should do, or not the first, second, or third option. So let me give you some other options that I think you might find to be much more valuable. First thing you can do is just stop doing it. Right? If I came to your business right now, I bet you 10 to 15% of the stuff that gets done in your business, you could just literally stop doing it with no negative outcome. A couple examples would be sending invoices. What we coach our clients to do is have credit card on file and just run the card at the beginning of the month, obviously with permission, everyone knows what it's gonna be. And I think you can click in QuickBooks, automatically email a sales receipt, done and done. So the whole process of sending invoices for most owners of cleaning companies can be completely ignored. Second thing would be, I'll bet you there's stuff that you're tracking right now that you don't check or take action on, but you've tasked someone or maybe yourself to, or maybe you check it, but you don't do anything different. You can just stop tracking it, literally. So those are just some examples of, again, 10% of the stuff that you're doing, you don't have to hire anyone to do it. You can just stop doing it. All right, the second, so if we can't stop doing it, that might only eliminate 10% of the work. There's still 90% left. We can systematize it. An example of that would be, like, say God forbid, you or somebody is taking supplies to cleaners when they need it. A system would be, hey, we have a weekly meeting and all the supplies are there and you have to refill your supplies at that weekly meeting. And if you don't do a good job there, it's on you to figure it out on your own. We're not going to do it for you, right? That would be creating a system around something that's not working. The third piece would be software, right? Say you want an automated text or email system. When someone signs up, they get an automated text and email, or your hiring funnel has some automated automations to it. Software is fantastic for that. You don't have to hire a guy or a gal, or you certainly don't have to be texting people how to do these sorts of things. With AI, it can even do more and more and more. All right, so if we can't eliminate it altogether or just stop doing it, we can't create a system around it, and software is not going to do it. We still don't have to hire just yet. We can sub it out, right? So like we talked about the answering service, right? That's subbing it out. You're not going to hire a human being or a team of human beings to answer the phones 24/7. You're just going to sub it out. Payroll is a perfect example to that. You should be doing payroll. You don't need to hire a payroll specialist unless you've got 40 hours a week of payroll, which I can assure you don't. A janitorial supply company is another, like, oh, I got to buy all my supplies and I got to just hire a goddamn janitorial supply company and let them handle it. So sub it out would be coaches, our clients. We would be subbing out, we don't have to come on staff. So sub it out would be the next kind of least invasive thing. The next thing is going to be supplement the current team, right? So this is having employees step up to a higher level without having to hire a new employee. So an example of this would be, a lot of times people would have a cleaner do rags, or they'd do the rags for the team, or they would, so they'd have some company do the rags. You could literally just tell each team, whoever the driver is, we coach you to pay whatever the mile, it's like right now, I think it's like 75 cents, whatever the government deduction is for a mile. And usually they make some decent money, right? They get more on that than the gas costs them. So they're very happy with that. And you just say, hey, part of being a driver, you got to do the rag. And it takes them 5 minutes. They get home, once or twice a week, they throw it in the wash, they hit go, they walk away for an hour, they come back, they switch it, they hit go. Literally, if you just hit a stopwatch for the time it takes them, each load would take 6 minutes. Not a big deal, right? So that's an example of where you can supplement your current team. Again, on the hiring funnel, if you're like, I don't want to do the group interviews, the one-on-one interviews, the working interviews, cool. You would just have your employees, run each of those. So supplement current team just means holding the standards for your team a little higher. Now keep in mind, we're still thin slicing. That doesn't mean the accountant is doing sales or the salesperson is doing quality checks, but they are doing what they should be doing in their job. So notice on the cleaners, they're handling rags. That's a cleaning issue, right? That has nothing to do with customer happiness. They're still in their own lane. They're just doing the full job, right? Another thing would be, I need to have a supervisor. No, you don't. If you have good employees that do their job right and they check each other and they check their own work, you don't need a supervisor. So when we say raise the standard and supplement the work that your team's already doing, they're going to be doing it in their own lane, not in some other lane. Okay, those are what you can usually get 80% of your work gone, right? But most people start here, which is hire somebody. And we want to make sure you go through that process first before you hire anybody. You're like, can I just stop doing it? Can I systematize it? Can I use software to take care of it? Can I have a current team member stay in their lane and start doing this? 80% of your problems will go away just doing that. For the 20% that's left, you hire somebody. Two ways to do it, 1099 or W-2. Typically in the cleaning industry, like when you have a customer happiness manager, that or a scheduler, that might be like a 5-hour-a-week job. This is not a full-time gig, right? Ideally, they have other jobs, right? They're working for other people and you're just one of their many clients. So these would be 1099s, right? So typically the bulk, if not all of your non-cleaning team is gonna be 1099, not W-2. Typically in a cleaning company, the only W-2 folk you would need would be cleaners and maybe yourself, if that's how your accountant says. Let's take a moment here, write your first job description. And again, feel free to download the one we have and either modify it or just use it straight up because we've been using it forever. And decide, here's who I'm gonna hire. So we start at the beginning with deciding, what was taking the most time, who you're gonna hire. Now you're gonna actually put some legs under it. Write out your job description or read through the job descriptions we provided, either modify one we've had or just use it straight up and go, okay, I've got my job description. And you can post that job description in a hiring platform and you're ready to go. So I'll give you a quick example of how powerful the job description is and just thinking through why I spent so much time on the job description. I had a company, again, my poor bride, when we were dating, I had a company that paid my bills pretty well. So for a young guy, we were making good money and we just travel all the time and had a bunch of fun. I never worked. And if I'm her, I'm like, this guy's great. This is amazing. And I proposed and she said yes. And shortly after we got married, a company that had been paying all the bills and running for years with very little input from me finally was, had slowly been degrading. And I was like, dang it, I gotta go back and fix this. So I baited and switched my poor wife from we're dating, it's all traveling and fun, and then when we get married, we got to get to work. But the point of the story is, I think we had 4 or 5 office people. So obviously there was technicians in the field that I'm not talking about them. It's a construction company, so the bulk of the people were in the field, not in office. But there was at least 3, probably 4, maybe 5. I can't remember because it's years ago. But these were full-time people, and these were not cheaters that were like milking the clock, right? They were just doing the best that they could with the job descriptions I had given them. So they weren't really clear. They didn't have SOPs or process. They didn't know what to do, and they were doing the best, and they were all probably working 40 or 50 hours. My sweet bride and I came back in and just replaced all of them. So the 2 of us replaced, we'll call it 4 people. The 2 of us replaced 4 people. And the first week, it was a while back, I can't remember perfectly, but it feels like we probably worked a good 40-hour week. It wasn't that we worked a ton, it was kind of stressful because everything was on fire. So I don't think we worked more than a 40 or 50-hour week. And we only did that for a couple of months, but within 2 or 3 months, the 2 of us got down to where we were working 15 hours a week. Like we'd wander in at 10 o'clock in the morning, we'd leave around 1. I don't know how many that is, 5 days a week. It was really systematized. So the point is, it wasn't that we were that much smarter. We just spent those first couple stressful months writing down and systematized what we were doing, and we were able to do it really quickly. And then that company's actually the first one I sold for 7 figures, which is great. So the big kind of wrap it all up, you want your job descriptions to be 1 page, simple, right? When you've got this big long thing, it's no good. You want to be core values based, thin sliced, they're only doing 1 job. And the reason they can be 1 page and so short is because it's going to be a list of outcomes, not to-dos. And the way I would look at this is job descriptions are like following a recipe to get great cookies. You follow a good recipe, you're generally going to get the same result every time, as opposed to just kind of winging it and being like, I want some cookies and I'm going to start with some eggs and some flour, and anything I think tastes delicious, I'm just going to throw it in along the way. That's going to get you a different result. So the thing to keep in mind as we close, an hour of thinking through what actually needs to be done can save thousands of hours and hundreds of thousands of dollars. Clarity equals power. So take the time to understand the job descriptions, to think through what you need this person to do before you actually hire them. So I hope this helped. If you want to jumpstart this whole thing, again, you can use our done for you job descriptions, the links in the deal below in the description. If you would like the video that ties all this together, there's also a link for that. That's the 3 steps to build $1 million cleaning company. I put that link there as well. So I hope this has been helpful. If you'd like to jumpstart this whole process, just again, click in the description for our done for you job description. no charge. If you want the full-blown plan that kind of ties all this together, I also put a link to the 3-step path to your $1 million cleaning business in the link. That's the best overview of all of this stuff. So all that to say, I'll end with, you don't want to be the smartest guy or gal in the room. You want to be the guy or gal empowering the smartest people in the room. Remember, you're not a player, you're the coach. You build the systems and the team builds your company.